Okay, I'm here with Miss Jillian Conway. She's going to be the person I'm interviewing today. Okay, so the first question is what is a topic or a subject where you pretended to be knowledgeable?
So I feel like a subject that I really pretend to be knowledgeable about is just like politics generally that are like currently happening today with like different political candidates and stuff like that. I feel like there's so many like different with like the 2024 election coming up and stuff like that. There's all these like different people running and like obviously I know like Trump and Biden are running, but I have absolutely no idea who the other people are. And whenever people like say their names, I just kind of pretend like I know who they are, when in reality I have absolutely no idea.
Why do you think you pretend to know what you know?
I pretend to know who they are because obviously you don't want to seem like uneducated and that you don't care about like current events and what's going on in the world. But I feel like politics is just a stressful topic and stuff like that, and a lot of people are just really have like I think politically can really impact like your morals and stuff like that, and so people can be kind of like, oh, does she not care about stuff like that? And so I feel like I have to fake it for that. I guess like fair judgment.
Have you ever been put in a situation where it was like you had to pretend to like you let's say you say you're not as knowledgeable in politics, but then like let's say someone was going against what you were like saying or what you believe. Was there ever an instance where it was like they seemed more prepared about like talking about their side of the argument in comparison to you, but you continued to just be like strong in what you were saying?
Honestly, not really. Usually, if someone like gives more info and is like justifiable and backed up in his research space, if I like agree with it and like the facts make sense, then I'm willing to sway my opinion. I've never been really firm and like, oh, I have to believe this.
Yeah.
Open-minded, I guess.
What's stopping you from like learning more about politics and becoming more educated?
To be honest, I'm really lazy. I know that's so bad. I know that's so bad. I do care. I do care. It's just like I feel like I know like your vote matters and stuff like that, but at the end of the day I feel like it doesn't in a sense. Like it's like I'm one person. But I do know I should care more. I guess it's just such a stressful topic and like people really care so much, and so sometimes I feel like in society when things are so overwhelming and I feel like politics have gone so downhill lately that sometimes I feel like my own ignorance allows me to be bliss in a sense, because I feel like once you get like really like knowledgeable of the harsh realities of the world and you can't really fix it, there's no really going back. You just start to get the world from a different outlook.
Okay. What is the social issue that you feel most people pretend to understand, or at least behave as if they understand it better than you?
Okay, we're gonna have to pause a bit. I have not thought this far.
No, it's okay. It's like it's completely raw on it. It's just a like part of my citation.
Oh,
yeah. So just you can think about it.
It's a hard one.
Yeah. Any social issue, like for example, for me, I would say a social issue that people mostly pretend to understand is like, probably in like the heat of everything now, probably like women's rights. You see a lot of like men kind of talking about like women's reproductive rights as if they're really knowledgeable about the anatomy of a woman, but they're not. And then like there's like stuff with like racism, and then there's like there's what's it called? There's like people talking about foreign policy all the time, taxes.
Okay, I know mine.
Yeah.
Mine is that women are still completely treated right in the business field. A lot of guys I talk to are like, no, that's so dumb. Women are treated right, when in reality they have no idea the like harshness of it, especially if you do like international business. I didn't think about it from like a standpoint. Everyone's like, oh, like the equal movement and stuff like that. And like, while women's rights have come so far, I feel like there's still a lot of prejudice against women in like the workforce and stuff like that. And I feel like a woman always has to like work 10 times harder than her male like counterparts, and are still looked down on like constantly, whether that's internationally because half women don't even have rights there, and like, oh, but they're U.S. citizens, fine, you know, but like not even in the U.S., like people still look down on women in the workforce every single time, and they have to speak up 10 times louder, and like guys mansplain and all that stuff. It's really annoying.
Why do you think that specifically guys or people in general pretend to know so much about women in the business
Well,
world?
because they think they like, because oh, maybe they aren't sexist, that the problem solved, or oh, it's so much better than it was, that they're so knowledgeable about it, but oh, that's not really an issue now, when in reality it isn't. It just makes them kind of feel better about society and think we've grown, but growth doesn't mean fixing something.
Okay. And what can we do to help people acknowledge and embrace their own ignorance?
I feel like exposing them to the harsh realities and maybe like seeing like the small things. Like for example, I think people cannot intentionally be sexist while still being sexist. Like making small things like, oh, like I don't know, you'll just hear small comments, you're like, I don't know if I would have said that. If that makes sense. And so like showing people like the harsh realities, or like just like the, like, you know, like when people are like start acting like a man, you know, like stuff like that, that's sexist in a sense. Or like toughen up, stuff like that, or gross and balls, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff is like toughen up. But obviously you're not going to say that, but then they'll be like,
yeah, that's fine.
Like, stop being a pussy. You know, do you see? That's literally sexist if you think about it. Yeah. And stuff like that. So I feel like, if you just, like, showed people, like, even as a society, how we say stuff like that, and just expose them to the harsh realities.
And then, as for, like, ignorance in general, do you think it's, like, what do you think is, like, the root cause of, like, especially specific to, like, you're talking about, like, gender ignorance. Yeah. And how, like, men kind of disregard women, and they're just kind of like, oh, they're fine, they're living their lives, whatever. So what do you think is like the main cause of this type of ignorance?
Historical. I just think it's dated back so far that people are just so used to it, and or how they were raised culturally as well.
And then going back to the topic of like mansplaining, right? I would say like mansplaining is kind of like just men pretending to know everything, right? Yeah. And then just kind of like shoving it in your face and kind of like force you to be right about, or forcing you to like believe them and stuff. But like, other than like any historical reason, but why do you think that like men have such like a dominant, I guess, effect with like mansplaining?
I think a lot of people are raised that like men have to always be at the center of the household, and I'm not gonna argue whether or not I agree or disagree with that, but because I think about that, they just are just like, I think it's like hormones too, like they're meant to be a more dominant species, like biologically, I guess. And so I feel like guys are also taught as like a kid, like tough, like, you know, like to be the center of it and being more like physical and stuff like that. And so they, I feel like, can be raised like to take over, and so that's what leads them to mansplain.
If you were to talk about, like, this subject specifically to literally anybody, would you say, like, you're relatively, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how knowledgeable would you be about things such as, like, sexism and then, like, women in the workforce?
I would say, like, I'm, like, maybe, like, a 6 or 7. Like, I could definitely get more knowledge about it, and since I'm not in the workforce really yet, and I don't know what every, like, girl goes through, that I wouldn't say I'm the most knowledgeable, but, like, just hearing, like, my mom and my grandma's, like, experiences. Like, my grandma was, like, one of the first women to be, like, in a higher-up position and stuff like that, and explained how that was difficult and stuff like that. So I've definitely been able to get like knowledge of like what it's like now from like different people I know, but there's always room to grow, and I think there's more things I could like statistically know.
Yeah. And would you ever be willing to like educate yourself more about this topic, or is it like...
Yeah, I would.
Okay. It's good to hear. Okay, well that's it. Okay. Yay.
Thanks,
say bye. Yay.